Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating bit of historical detective work. We are going to reconstruct the harrowing, real-life experiences of a single Revolutionary War soldier. And the coolest part? We're doing it entirely through the stunning visual evidence of his surviving 19th century pension files. You know, when we think of the Revolutionary War, we usually picture grand oil paintings or marble statues. But the real, gritty history? It's written in faded ink on incredibly fragile paper. So let's step back in time and use these amazing period graphics to piece together one man's life.
Okay, let's jump right in. The whole catalyst for this archival paper trail starts with the official printed regulations for the Acts of Congress passed on June 7, 1832. Now, this was a massive deal because it finally offered pensions to surviving Revolutionary War soldiers, guys who were, by this point, in their 70s and 80s. But, as you can probably guess from looking at the dense, formal text on this document, this promise of federal money came with some absolutely massive bureaucratic hurdles.
Just get a load of this quote from the regulations. The government demanded that every applicant will produce the best proof in his power. A full account of the services of each person will be indispensable. Basically, they forced these aging veterans to recall and document super specific details of a war they fought half a century ago just to claim what they were owed. I mean, imagine someone asking you today to provide a verifiable account of what you were doing 50 years ago with zero modern records to back you up. That was their reality.
So that brings us to unearthing Ansel Fields, a Virginia boy in the Carolina militia. Let's meet the guy whose entire life story was meticulously cataloged in these files.
Now, what's really interesting here is this 1936 typed summary from the Department of the Interior. It basically acts as our Rosetta Stone. Decades after the war and long after Ansel passed away, people were still requesting his records. By typing this all up cleanly in the 20th century, archivists gave us the perfect key to decode Ansel's journey before we have to dive into the really messy original handwriting.
And that typed summary builds a super clear timeline of his life. Born in 1750 in Hanover County, Virginia, he eventually makes his way down to Guilford County, North Carolina. Enlisting in the militia in 1780, the very next year he's fighting in the pivotal Battle of Guilford Courthouse. Fast forward a bit, and in 1831 he packs up and moves out to Shelby County, Indiana, passing away in 1834, right as his pension was approved. It's just this classic, incredible story of American westward expansion mapped out over 84 years.
All right, let's look at the Carolina campaigns, decoding the handwriting of war, and see what his actual service looked like on paper.
Just take a moment to look at this stunning period artifact. You can literally see the sprawling 19th century cursive where an 85-year-old Ansel swore in open court about his service. Look at the visual texture here, the heavy strokes of ink, the slight bleed through that antique paper. This was recorded in Indiana in 1834. Ansel literally had to stand in front of a judge and pull memories of the Carolina militia out of the deep recesses of his mind.
Now, since that sprawling cursive is, well, pretty tough to read, here are the core facts he declared. He confirmed he volunteered in July 1780. And he wasn't just a private, he was a sergeant. He specifically named his commander, Colonel James Martin, and noted his spot in the Guilford Regiment. Every single one of these details was crucial for the War Department to verify his story.
But this heavily inked page right here, this is the absolute treasure of the whole file. If you look closely, it's a dense, first-hand narrative of Ansel's perilous march and his face-off with the British Army. This isn't some sanitized textbook version of the Revolution. It's an exhausted militiaman's actual memory of marching hundreds of miles, guarding prisoners, and waiting for the world's most formidable military force to show up. Breaking down the tactical movements directly from that handwritten page, we can track exactly what his unit did. They assembled at Spring Garden. Then, when the British got within 3 miles, they deliberately retreated to lure the enemy further inland. They finally clashed in an old field and a wood, fighting so fiercely they essentially ran out of ammo and had to scatter for a whole month. It paints a really vivid, chaotic picture of guerrilla warfare back in the 1780s.
Okay, moving on to proving the claim, navigating the red tape, because honestly, surviving the British was only half the battle for Ansel.
Decades later, the biggest obstacle Ansel faced was that he'd lost his written discharge papers. He had absolutely zero official military documentation. So as you can see in these sworn oaths, he had to rely on his community. He wrangled up local character witnesses, men like clergyman William Smith and a neighbor, Hardin Carter. They formally swore in court to Ansel's reputation as a soldier. It's a really fascinating glimpse into how 19th century law relied so heavily on personal honor. And the crazy part is that all of this exhaustive paperwork, the testimonies, the court dates, finally culminated in this tiny, unassuming index card. This little slip of paper officially granted Ansel Fields a pension of exactly $30 a year for his service to the nation. $30 a year. It sounds like nothing today, but back then it was the federal government finally acknowledging his sacrifice.
Which brings us to a widow's legacy. The fight continues. Sadly, Ansel passed away on October 1, 1834, just months after his pension was finalized. So the bureaucratic battle fell to his wife, Martha.
This 1839 court document brings Martha right into the spotlight. Now, in her 80s, she had to march back to the courthouse and swear under oath that they were legally married during the Revolution to get her survivor benefits. But just like Ansel's missing discharge, Martha didn't have an official marriage certificate. Out on the colonial frontier, those were rarely documented by the state. So, to prove they were married, she submitted something incredibly personal. This fragile, handwritten roster of her 12 children's birth dates. We've got it displayed here next to a typed translation so it's easier to read. Literally torn straight from the family record, the government accepted this list of births as legal proof that Ansel and Martha were a family during the war. And when you look at just a few of these names, Mary, born in 82, Nathaniel in 84, all the way down to Patsy in 1808, it really hits you. By the time this piece of paper was reviewed by the government to secure Martha's pension, it had outlived almost all of the kids written on it. It's pretty poignant, right? This one piece of paper became the ultimate proof of their family's legacy.
But hey, her persistence totally paid off, as evidenced by this final card showing her officially inscribed on the roll of pensioners. Decades after the war ended, this widow secured her $30 a year, ensuring their lifelong partnership was permanently recorded by the U.S. government.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this thought. We just reconstructed an entire family's epic journey through war, migration, and endless bureaucracy, using nothing but a few visually captivating handwritten pages. If the life, battles, and legacy of one single man can be so vividly preserved in these fragile documents, what other unbelievable American stories are out there, gathering dust in an archive, just waiting to be unearthed? Thanks for exploring the past with me today. Keep your curiosity alive, and always keep looking for the stories hiding in the margins.